What if everything you've been told about prosperity was never real? What if the growth, comfort, stability, and wealth that shaped the modern world were built on a quiet trade, a trade where tomorrow was sold piece by piece, so today could look a little shinier, a little wealthier, a little more stable? And what if the bill for that trade is about to come due? Because behind every booming economy, behind every record year, and behind every government promise, there's a silent cost, a cost that future generations never agreed to pay. Today, we uncover the true cost of prosperity and the hidden financial machine that allowed the world to live beyond its means, without ever noticing the walls closing in, how prosperity became a performance. To understand the illusion, we need to go back to the mid-20th century, a period when nations rebuilt after global conflict, when consumerism became a lifestyle, and when political leaders discovered a new tool, a tool that would change how economies grow, how governments survive, and how citizens understand wealth. That tool was debt, but not the kind that came with limits. This was the era when economists like John Maynard Keynes, central bankers like Marana Eccles, and politicians desperate for growth realized something radical. You could create the appearance of prosperity, even when real productivity wasn't rising. Borrowing could fill the gaps. Borrowing could fuel spending. Borrowing could postpone consequences. Borrowing could turn an economy into a performance. But every performance has a script, and every script has a moment when the act begins to fall apart. The birth of the prosperity illusion. The illusion began with good intentions. After World War II, governments wanted stability, they wanted employment, they wanted growth. But real growth takes time. Real productivity takes innovation. Real wealth takes sacrifice. So instead, governments adopted a shortcut: borrow now, grow later. In the United States, the Federal Reserve expanded credit. In Europe, reconstruction loans became permanent pipelines. In developing countries, institutions like the IMF stepped in with money that came attached to decades of dependency. Debt wasn't seen as a trap back then. It was seen as a miracle tool, a way to skip the painful part of rebuilding. But no one realized what this tool would become, how debt became the engine of prosperity. By the 1970s, something changed. Nations no longer borrowed because they needed to. They borrowed because they had to. The cost of living rose, economic expectations rose, political promises rose. And then, the biggest shift of all, in 1971, the US dollar was disconnected from gold. Money stopped being backed by value and started being backed by confidence. A confidence governments worked tirelessly to maintain. Once money became untethered, the illusion grew even easier to maintain. Want prosperity? Print it. Want progress? Borrow it. Want votes? Spend it. Debt became the oxygen of modern economies. Consumption became the lifeblood and citizens became the fuel. As wages stagnated, easy credit filled the gap. Mortgages, credit cards, student loans. These weren't accidents. They were strategic pressure valves, allowing people to feel richer even as they slipped deeper into dependence. When tomorrow's bills started arriving early, but illusions don't last. By the late 1990s, the first cracks appeared. Countries began drowning in obligations. Household debt reached historic levels. Corporations relied on borrowing just to survive. Yet instead of slowing down, the world doubled down. Interest rates were lowered, regulations were loosened, financial products grew more complex. Then 2008 arrived. The entire world suddenly discovered that prosperity had been purchased with borrowed time. The markets collapsed, homes were repossessed, banks failed, and the only solution governments had was the very poison that caused the crisis: more debt, more spending, more illusions. Why the illusion can't be sustained forever. What followed was not a recovery, but a transformation. Economies became hooked on cheap money. Central banks became the lifeline of markets. Governments became dependent on future generations who had no say in the matter. Every time growth slowed, more fuel was pumped into the system. Every time inflation rose, more excuses were made. Every time the illusion flickered, leaders worked desperately to keep the lights on. But here's the truth: you cannot borrow your way into long-term prosperity. You can only borrow your way into short-term comfort. Comfort, however, always has a price. Why no policy has ever solved the debt problem. Politicians tried austerity, it failed because voters rejected it. They tried stimulus. It worked, but only temporarily. They tried regulation. Banks found ways around it. They tried deregulation. It triggered new risks. They tried shifting debt from public to private sectors. It trapped citizens instead of governments. Every fix simply moved the burden from governments to corporations, from corporations to households, from households to future generations. But the burden never disappeared. It only changed hands. The patterns are repeating, only bigger today. The illusion is larger than ever. Global debt has surpassed $310 trillion. Over 90 countries spend more on interest than they do on education, nearly half the world's population. It lives in nations where future taxes will only pay for past decisions. This is not prosperity. This is borrowed prosperity. And the patterns are identical. Rising debt, stagnant wages, inflated assets, political promises, currency devaluation. Dependency masked as growth. The illusion is still alive, but only because people stopped asking how it works. Prosperity isn't the problem. The problem is the price we aren't told about. The world has been living as if tomorrow doesn't matter, but tomorrow always arrives. And when it does, the illusion fades. The true cost of prosperity is not paid in money, it's paid in time, in future opportunity, and in the freedom of generations not yet born. Modern prosperity is built on debt, not productivity. Growth today often comes at the expense of tomorrow. Governments depend on constant borrowing to survive. Stopping isn't an option, which makes the system fragile. The illusion only survives if people stop questioning it. Transparency is the only defense against financial